play. And another foul on board. His third for setting a screen.
Because of physical play, although Jordan Taylor just got caught with a moving screen.
Pick and roll. And a foul, offensive foul coming up. Ken Valentine standing right there.
Dying for a moving screen.
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Moving Screen podcast. I am Brendan Quinn of The Athletic. On the other side, Dylan Burkhart, umhoops.com. One of the final preseason pods before the 2019-20 season. We are almost there. Dylan, what do we got? We got 6 days? 5 days?
6 days, 5 days, something like that. It's our last week without real basketball. We've got BTN Plus subscriptions going. We've got all the lovely preseason content that you come to love. Michigan State played a game last night. You were there. That's where we are. We're almost at the season here.
Yeah, unreal. Ready to go. How did you enjoy that BTN Plus broadcast? Kevin Palga himself dropping the analysis, right?
He was on there. Yeah, I mean, it was everything you need.
Dropping
it was
knowledge.
A high quality student production there.
Was it the most analytics that you've heard in a television broadcast?
It was definitely the first time I've heard the net rating explained on a preseason exhibition broadcast. So that was what we all come to see.
Outstanding from KP. All right. So today we just kind of want to run through some quick hitters on the week that was or week that is. Michigan with an open practice on Monday night, kind of our first glance really behind the curtain of what the offense might look like and some of these new guys who are being asked to step into larger roles up at Michigan State. Obviously, the last test run for the number one ranked team in the country before a mega matchup against Kentucky next week that I know I am amped up to get to. So we're going to start with the Spartans. Dylan, there was, I think, some positive takeaways, lots of meh, and maybe a few more question marks than some people might have wanted to see, considering I don't want to use the word hype, but just kind of the national feel for how good Michigan State is. What were your takeaways watching from the comforts of home?
My first takeaway is I'm a little worried about the safety of whoever Aaron Henry dunked on because that was just not right.
I think that he has what's below D3, JUCO, NAIA. He might have knocked him all the way down there.
He's out. He's done for the year. He's made Sports Center though, so he'll always be able to say that. Just not how he ever wanted. I think
in terms of the actual team, what did you think?
I think my biggest thing is probably I'm a little fascinated at how many questions are kind of up in the air for this Michigan State team, basically at every position other than the 1 and the 5. And I'm just wondering how that's going to play out. And I think that's something to be excited about in terms of flexibility. But there's guys playing who you just don't really know what to expect from them on the big stage, right? We're going to see that, and they're going to learn that right away on Tuesday. But I'm just really curious to see how some of those players play in that situation.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like going into Tuesday, having watched that team last night, I almost feel like you know what you're going to get from Cassius Winston. You know what you're going to get from Xavier Tillman, like you said. If I had to pick a third guy that I'm like, I could basically predict exactly how this guy is going to play in that game right now, my answer would probably be Thomas Kithier.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think he played great, and he's the most reliable guy right there, kind of, who's just going to do exactly what he's asked to. He's going to rebound. He's going to make the right plays. Aaron Henry is a guy who I look at, and I'm like, he's trying to do a couple extra things, right, from last year. And that's going to be in sort of a weird in-between zone where he's trying to do a little bit more. They need him to do a little bit more. He's not always going to be comfortable doing a little bit more right now. And that's kind of what I saw from him, I would say.
Yeah. So Aaron is in that interesting spot of, the freshman going into the sophomore year what is being asked of him right now, I don't feel like it fits to his default settings. I feel like he's kind of someone who works more within an offense, kind of takes the residual stuff, can just go make a super athletic play, can make shots, can set his feet if you give him an open look, blah, blah, blah. Now, though, maybe the occasional ball screen, a second guy who can create looks, a guy who needs to catch and look to attack. Can't just catch and pass and look for someone else to do something. And I was talking to him in the locker room after the game, and he said that, he tried to kind of explain that process. I'll be writing about this before Tuesday, but he tried to, as best he could, and, Aaron Henry's a great guy to talk to because he really does try to explain kind of what's bouncing around his head. And he talked about that almost having to remind himself in the game, like, oh shit, it's me. I'm the one supposed to be doing this stuff now. And I mean, that's a hard thing. I think I have no doubt in my mind that by February, all of that will be set in. I think he'll be rocking and rolling, and he'll be one of the best players in the Big Ten. The question is November, December. What does it look like? How bloody is that transition? Because there's going to be some hard times, and he's going to get, I have a feeling, I don't know about whipping boy, but he's going to be the dude who Tom Izzo's probably riding the hardest early on here.
I would not be surprised if he goes out and scores 25 points against Kentucky
totally
on Tuesday, and I would not be surprised if he went like 2 of 7 from the floor with 5 turnovers.
Exactly.
I mean, it could be either one of those. And that's really kind of speaks to where he has it in his growth process, and it's not really saying that he can't do one or the other. It's just I really have no idea what to expect.
And I'm sure if we knew more about Kentucky and that roster, we could probably sit here and have the same conversation about a couple of their sophomores.
For sure.
It's just the nature of basketball on November 5th. So the 4 spot is the other big question that's kind of cooking right now, and it appears to be by committee. At the moment, I don't foresee that changing anytime, but like you said, Thomas Kithier is the most reliable piece they have there. The question is he the best piece? And because I even think that today, that's probably the case.
I'm curious how he fares, and I would have to go back and kind of look at some of the numbers, but against maybe better teams and more athletic fours, and like how he fared in those kind of games last year. I'm trying to really remember like how his minutes came. He was always there to give you like 5 to 7 minutes in a spurt. You know what I mean? But are you going to go run him out there against Kentucky and play him 30 minutes against guys who are probably bigger, more athletic than him? You know what I mean?
But the question is, if not him, then who?
That's a great question. Were you surprised? Did Marcus Bingham also start the?
Marcus Bingham started the Gonzaga scrimmage.
Okay, and he did not start last night. Is that correct?
He did not start last night, and when he did get on the court, it was the struggle bus is in full effect for young Mr. Bingham right now, and he's going to be as interesting as anyone to watch on Tuesday. He's a guy who I wouldn't be surprised if he got 10 minutes, and he's also a guy I wouldn't be surprised if he does not see the court.
That sounds about right. We're throwing out some pretty wild ranges of production for these guys right now.
And we'll get more. Are we doing a preview pod?
We're going to do a Monday preview pod where we're going to dive into both openers in depth.
And we'll scout out some Kentucky stuff and have more talking points on actual matchups. But, yeah, I mean, Bingham, what are you seeing in his game right now? He's just a guy who he looks like he's constantly at a yellow light. And
he gets pushed around inside. He didn't make a 2 last year. I think we talked about that. He didn't make a 2 last night. If you can't be a Michigan State and not be able to finish in the paint, right? And I think Izzo said last night he's added 20 pounds, but he can't tell him he needs to add another 20 pounds, something like that. It definitely shows. And at the same time, you have a 6'10 guy who can step out and shoot threes. That's a weapon. That was a huge weapon for what they did, but you just need him to get a little tougher, a little more physical inside. And if you're not doing that against Albion, it's going to be hard, I think, to earn that trust early in the season.
Yeah, I mean, he committed 2 just unnecessary fouls. Was being posted up by some 6'6" guy who did the old grade school 3 pump fakes, right? Because the guy knows he's about to get his shot blocked, and went up with it anyway. And Bingham leaves his feet and fouls him. And I think Izzo was busy yelling at Aaron Henry, but like Cassius Winston just like went right up to him and kind of gave him one of those perplexed looks, like why are you leaving your feet? Just stand straight up. You're the tallest guy on the court. It's just little stuff like that like, okay, if it was this time last year, he's a freshman, you don't even think twice about it. But you're like, man, you've been here for a year. Like those are the little things that need to be eliminated now. And because the point that you brought up with, okay, what happens with the Thomas Kithier when they play a team with athletic bigs and stretch fours and blah, 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 guys who can do different things? Well, like, ideally, it would be Marcus Bingham. But right now, what's there, I just don't know.
Yeah.
I'll be curious to see how much they use Aaron Henry with minutes at the 4 on Tuesday.
Yeah, and it seems like there's what's the latest on Kyle Arns? I mean, it sounds like if he's healthy, I would just put him out there at the 4, right?
Undoubtedly.
So
if he's healthy, he's playing 20 minutes minimum in that game.
So that's another option. And then I thought Malik Hall.
The other option would be if the folks in Indianapolis would be so kind as to bend to the wishes of Michigan State, that would be, a total game changer. Did you catch my exchange with Izzo?
I did not catch it.
I just said, hypothetical, if Joey Hauser is deemed eligible or his waivers granted, how much are you comfortable with him doing on Tuesday night? And his answer was lots. That was it. That was the only quote. So, I think if Hauser can play, Hauser's on the court 25 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know who's going to step up and just take those minutes from him based on everything we've seen, right? There's a lot of potential, a lot of pieces.
Hauser and Kithier splitting the time. Tillman playing 35 minutes, barring foul trouble.
Yep, that would be your rotation there. That's
right.
Obviously a big question mark, and I guess the answer potentially coming down Friday on Hauser. Is that right?
That's what Izzo said. I have no idea.
I feel like it's been next Friday for
right. And I've never heard of like the NCAA being like, we got an answer coming to you this day. I've never heard of such a thing actually happening that way. So I don't know.
I can't imagine a phone call where you say the season starts on Tuesday. Are we ever going to hear anything? And they're like, maybe by Friday. Like, come on, people.
Right.
How long can you really go with this?
What do you like about Kithier right now before we hop into Rocket Watson, Aaron Henry a little bit more?
I think he gives some of that dependability as far as rebounding, as far as just running Michigan State stuff, right? Like, he knows what is expected, and given the pieces around him, you don't need someone that can really play above and beyond from that spot. Really, like Kenny Goins made his living just being in the right spot, running the sets properly, rebounding the hell out of the ball, and then move on, play good defense. And I think Kithier gives you that, and I think he's really developed more than I would have expected if we had this conversation a year ago, that he'd be in line to probably start for this team. Yeah,
you wonder if he had played his senior year in high school, if he'd even be further along, which would be something else. But with Kithier, I feel like people, when they talk about replacing Kenny Goins, like, it's probably not talked about the fact that he was a top 10 rebounder in the Big Ten last year. Like, that needs to be replaced somehow. Obviously it was Albion, whatever, but Kithier grabbed 11 rebounds last night. Was by far the guy who was just in position to get rebounds all night. And that's the big thing about Kithier, is that he's just someone who finds himself in the right place. He has that feel for the game. I think he's got that kind of innate ability to, see a shot go up, know where to position himself in the paint, sees where the ball's going, things like that, whatever cliche you can't teach, but like, I think he has a lot of that stuff. So, the same way that Izzo, I think, is just comfortable when Kyle Arns is on the court, I think he's pretty much getting there to that same point with Thomas Kithier, where Kithier is going to be a guy who plays a ton of minutes because you almost put him on the court and you forget he's out there. because he's just out there doing his job and he's not going to do anything stupid that draws the hook, right?
Mm-hmm. And you talk about rebounding. Kenny wasn't an insane athlete. He wasn't rebounding because he was such an athlete. He was rebounding because that's how he contributed from that spot on the floor. And Kithier's kind of the same way, I think. So I think that he has really carved out a role in a way that, I don't know, maybe we didn't talk about enough earlier.
Right. And especially, when you talk about a high-level game like Tuesday, having someone out there who's going to know what the assignment is, going over screens, going under screens, on switches, all the stuff that's going to be happening in real time. Like, I think Kithier knows what he's doing. So, unless it's Hauser, like, this could be, like, I don't think, like, a 30-minute night is out of the question for Kithier next week.
No, because I could see two-minute shifts for Bingham in each half, right?
Right.
I mean, if you blow up like that in a game like that, you're not really going to be at the front of the queue to come back in the game. So I definitely can see that. I'm curious. I mean, I want to wrap up kind of here with Michigan State and talk about the one guy who got the start and I think is on the top of everyone's mind, Rocket Watts. What did you see from him in his first public appearance, I guess, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, it was I'll say this thing. I think it's good that he went 0 for 5 on threes. And I'll tell you why. Because if he went 4 for 5 on threes, he would come out against Kentucky, and that ball would be flying all over the place. You know what I mean? Like, it was probably good to get a little ego check on his game, because he does play 100 miles an hour. But his talent is so obvious. And, like, any loose ball, when he scoops, it's instant entertainment. And he just goes end to end so fast. He gives him a completely different gear. It's fascinating to watch him and Winston operate, because Winston, while he is hiccup quick and all that, he's not a sprinter. Like, Winston, even when he's playing fast, it looks like he's just walking. And Rocket is the exact opposite. But I like his game. I do. He's a little loose with the ball. He's a little loose in everything. He's loose with his shot.
He's playing faster than he's comprehending the game, and so he's going 100 miles an hour to make a play the moment he touches the ball, and he gets out ahead of his skis, whatever. Like, those kind of plays are going to happen early in the year, but when he has the ball, he's doing something. You're watching, right? Like, you say, all right, he's going to go make a play, and there's not a lot of guys who just have that innate ability that I have the ball, I'm going to do something with it positive, right? And you can definitely see that with him. I think in transition a couple times he got just going too fast and sort of just out of his lane, made a pass that wasn't really there. Those things will work out in time. I think you clearly see just physically what he can do defensively in a way that I don't know that there's another guy who can really guard twos like him on the roster. Obviously Henry, but the two of them together is a great defensive duo.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to talk about what you said about the pace and the tempo. He needs to learn, like, Winston's whole game is based on changing speeds and deceiving people with his speed. If you're fast as all hell, if you only go that fast, it's defendable, right? So he needs to learn that sometimes it's okay to slow down, sometimes it's okay to change speed, and I think he can add that to his game.
And sometimes when you're on the break, like, sometimes you actually need to slow down. You need to kind of let the play develop. You want your guys to, run into the wings and stuff like that. If it's one-on, you catch the ball and you can run, but it's still 1-on-2, that doesn't do you much good. The thing with Watts, and when you talk about him and Henry, that jumps out to me is, like, Rocket does not look like a freshman. Like, he is thick. He's got, arms. He's got shoulders. He's got chest. Like, he's not some kid walking out there. Like, he looks like a just dude. He looks like the guys that you see at the Dukes and the Kentuckys and things like that. Because, it's, especially at the guard position, you just don't see, like, the guy I always mention when I see guys like Rocket is Jameer Nelson when he was at St. Joe's as a freshman. Don't roll your eyes.
Shocking.
But, like, no, he was just like a thick, like, bulldog dude who was just so physically ready to play that it made all the difference. And so, with Rocket, when I see a guy like that, I think it just breeds more confidence of like game readiness right now, because he's physically ready. And when you put him and Aaron Henry out there together, because Aaron Henry is a physical specimen and Xavier Tillman's a physical specimen, like they've got tough sons of bitches that are, will be able to push around pretty much anyone you put out in front of them.
Yeah, that team's going to guard.
And then Cassius.
They're going to. I think the biggest question, it seems like, for Michigan State's defense is how, instead of handling the perimeter, how they handle maybe just someone punching them right in the mouth inside, just based on that Gonzaga scrimmage, right? Because that's where maybe they lack a little bit of the defensive depth.
Totally. I mean, if I'm Cal right now, my entire game plan is to spend the first 10 minutes going right at Xavier Tillman and get 2 fouls on him. Because if you can get him on the bench, Michigan State suddenly looks rather pedestrian.
Yeah, and Tillman's production per minute is just insane right now. Right, like he played 22 minutes. No, 22 minutes, had 19, 8, 3 steals and a block. He's going to, whoever drafted him in the moving screen fantasy league must be feeling pretty good. It wasn't me. And he just has such a good feel with Winston that you kind of forget about just like 6 months later, but that was really what made that team so good, and that was quite obvious again last night, I think.
Yes. All right, we will now, let's pivot to Michigan. The secret scrimmage win over Detroit Mercy last week, and then open practice this week. They will have an exhibition this Friday. Are you coming up for that?
I will be there. Will you be there?
Yeah, of course I'll be there. Saginaw Valley State coming to town, so will be very interesting to see that. But I think the big question that's on people's minds right now, among the many when it comes to Michigan, is David DeJulius, man alive, looking like Reggie Miller out there, bombing. The question that you wanted to pose is buy or sell.
Yeah, so I guess we can first talk. So he had, 7 threes against Detroit, and then I think he had 17, 19 points, something like that, in the open scrimmage. Of note, he was running with the twos for the most part in the scrimmage, so he was sort of the focal point of that offense going against Michigan's perceived starters. Not really buy or sell, but I think obviously he's proven that he can provide a scoring punch, but I just think that it's worth talking about him in the sense of what he's going to be within the scope of Michigan's offense. I think he clearly can shoot, and he has that off-the-dribble jumper that he kind of struggled to make last year. I guess I'm not sure. I think people are getting a little bit ahead of themselves with him kind of being the answer to Michigan's offensive problems, because I think he needs to do a lot better job of, A, attacking the basket, and B, kind of seeing the floor and being a passer more than just a scorer. Mm-hmm. I think there's a role for him as a scorer, shooter, microwave off the bench. But beyond that, I'm not sure that we're like pushing him into the starting lineup or anything yet. Where are you at kind of with his growth?
The question I would say is this: how many guys on the team right now are confident that their shot's going in when they put it up?
Isaiah Livers,
right, and David DeJulius, and there's something to be said for that, and they need shot makers. Like there will be some lineups on the court sometime where you're just like, I don't know who's making a basket out there. Now things will change a little bit when Franz Wagner returns and all that, but you got to make threes, man. You got to make threes, and I'm not sure who else is making them. So I think David DeJulius has done more than enough to earn I don't know if primary is the right word, but like a major significant role in the rotation. The question right now is, would you be comfortable with him starting?
No, I don't think. Well, here's the problem: is can you start 3 6-foot players in one basketball lineup? That's the question, right? If you're talking about starting
1935, you could.
Like, I think Eli gives Michigan something that is kind of distinct. I think Xavier's obviously going to start. So that leaves you in kind of a weird in-between place of where you fit DeJulius in, right? Like, who's the better person to play all their minutes next to Xavier Simpson?
Right. Oh, well,
the answer is Eli, I think. The question becomes, can you stagger them a little bit so the 5 minutes Xavier's not on the court, DeJulius runs the team, and then also slides over the 2, right? Like, rotationally, I think that's probably the idea. But there's going to be a time when Michigan has to play 3 point guards at one time, just based on what the roster looks like right now.
Yeah. The thing with DeJulius is he does feel like a guy that, like, if you dial up the confidence, there's something there. So because of that, especially early on, almost like what they appear to have been trying to do with Nunez, with starting him, obviously giving him a clear opportunity to win minutes and find himself and get confident in his shot, and it doesn't appear to have happened quite yet. Friday will be interesting to see what Nunez does, because right now he's just kind of on the court. It feels like that all of that has actually happened for David DeJulius so far. And now it's October 30th, and who knows. But all that confidence is there. So it's one of those, like, if a guy is feeling that way, then, blow on that fire. Like, let it go. So why not?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, I feel like Beeline would always talk about the guy who's running the scout team all of a sudden looks really good in practice because they have that sort of role, right? And he's never going to play in that role when he's on the court next to Xavier Simpson necessarily, right? Like, if you're installing sets in practice, it's going to be a very different role in terms of what's expected from him. So I think in a lot of ways that role as the alpha dog of the second group makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure how. It'll be really interesting Friday how he's used within the rotation, right? How he kind of fits.
Right. And so much, and really one of the complicated things here is that so much of the question at the guard position when you're talking about the rotation and all that is kind of a residual of what's happening at the 4 position. Because if you need to play Isaiah Livers at the 4, because if Brandon Johns is not ready to lock that down and be the guy, then, now you're asking more out of those guards, right? If Livers has to play the 4, that opens up everything else there. So, like, Brandon Johns is enormously important and it's time for him to go be a college basketball player.
Yep, he was on the floor in the open practice. I don't know that he was really making plays in the open practice. Right. Obviously, he's been hurt. He didn't play in the scrimmage as a precaution, but he needs to show something at that spot that he can produce there, and he didn't really get all that involved in the scrimmage. I don't really know what to make of that as far as what it means for Michigan in the near term. It could just be that he's still limited.
Right.
We're just going to have to, I guess, see on that one. Where are you at with Brandon?
He's the... I have to sneeze. Hold on. There you go. He's the... For me, at this point, until I see more, he's kind of the definition of the super athletic big that seems to think that basketball is grabbing the ball and dunking it. And, launching an open shot when he's open. But everything else that actually equates to minutes and winning and all these important things are kind of like secondary. And that's what kept him off the floor last year. Fact. That's what kept him off the floor last year. This time around, I feel like being able to play for Juwan Howard, who was able to play for 19 years in the NBA because he knew how to play basketball. He was an unathletic 4 who played 19 years in the NBA. You can't find a greater definition of someone who knew how to play basketball at that position and do every single thing asked of you. All that needs to be downloaded into Brandon Johns, and all the talent's there. I mean, I've loved his game since he was like a sophomore in high school, and I thought he was a potential one and done caliber guy at that time. And something I wouldn't say something's gone sideways, but like he just needs to kind of figure out what he is.
Yeah, he's sort of stuck in neutral. He hasn't been able to figure out what it takes to actually get going and contribute other than that one game against Indiana, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the next month will determine if he's kind of defined by that one game against Indiana or he can find sort of that next level and just show it consistently when the lights come on. I also think, he could just, that light can turn quickly.
Totally. He could be a guy that midway through his junior year, suddenly it's, one of those.
We watched so many DJ Wilson practices or exhibitions where he looked like he was literally just standing there hoping to shoot three, and then all of a sudden we showed up at Madison Square Garden and he went and dropped like 20 and 15, and it was like, okay, well, this is a thing. So there was no way to predict that, and we can't see it really. So
if I had a bet, I would say that happens for Brandon Johns at some point
this year.
I don't know.
It's a weak bet.
What? It's either that or he's going to be, joining Albion playing at Michigan State in October. But
fair enough. The one other note on the 4 is that I would say Colin Castleton did play there pretty regularly during the open practice. Also,
I like that look.
Scrimmage, and that gives you a lot of rim protection defensively. It gives you maybe some question marks offensively, but interesting to see kind of how that goes, and it's just a good sign of a new era, so to speak, and a new kind of offense. Do you want to talk about anything as far as what we saw from Michigan on the floor? We saw probably our best look at kind of what they're going to run, what they're going to show.
Yeah, the thing that was just kind of most jarring was just the emphasis on pushing the ball, the emphasis in quick shots. You're just, when you watch a team for that many years and you see get into the half-court offense, pass, set, screen, all that, and now suddenly it's get the ball, go, one quick look and a shot goes up and then they're going back the other way. It's just, it's watching it is the same team, same uniforms, different team.
Yeah.
Or same players, same uniforms, different team. That's what I meant.
Yep.
All the drag screens, just one after another in transition, then a bunch of other different.
I clipped up a play that was basically the Mays team made a basket and Michigan hurried to inbound the ball. Xavier Simpson just pushed it the length of the court for a layup attempt in 3 seconds, which would have happened one time maybe as a mistake last year, if ever. Right? It was just not
the head coach's head would have actually exploded off of his shoulders.
Yeah, so that
with a "we don't do that." That's exactly what he'd be yelling from the sideline. We don't do that.
To be fair, Xavier missed the layup, so maybe a little bit room to grow in that regard. Mm-hmm. But definitely the transition. I think just watching what they're running in the half court too, what stands out to me and the way I kind of described it in a story I wrote today was they're going to just take sets that work across the NBA and run those sets. It's not like certain sets. The first set they ran was a set Michigan ran all the time last year. Mm-hmm. It was basically 2-guard offense, and then they're running and this is very much how the NBA works. So we've been like, what's Michigan's system going to be? The answer is they're going to take plays that work and use them, and they're going to be faster because NBA sets are generally one action, quick hitter, make a play, right? So I think we'll see that, but it's not really any secret system, which Juwan Howard's probably tired of everyone asking, what the hell are you going to run? He's like, we're going to run plays that people run to win basketball games in the NBA.
One of the fascinating things that's going to be on a nightly basis, I think early on, the thing to watch is how all these guys deal with the freedom that is now in front of them. Because it seemed like so much of what the offense was under Beilein was kind of circumscribed by weeks of film, and this is how we do, and this is the read off of this, and this is the read off of that. This is the read and react here. But you go here when you see this. You go here when you see this. And now I think a lot of it is, get the ball, and if you can go and score, go score the ball. I'm not saying they're rolling the ball out as the coach, they're coaching obviously, but there is a lot more play basketball, it seems.
Yeah, it's funny to me because people use the same term to describe both. Like, John Beilein's offense was probably the most read and react possible in the sense of you have to read everything that's happening and react with how you're supposed to react within the confines of his system, right? It was very hard to read and react.
Yeah,
I think this is more of a read and react where you're reading and you're just making a play, right? Like you're not reading through the appendix of the John Beilein encyclopedia of basketball. The reads are much more simple, right? And it's funny because you can call them both read and react, and it means entirely different things.
Well said, yeah.
So I think that just seeing that, right, like one action and then play basketball, whereas the other one was 3.5 actions to set up the actual action where you have to kind of play through all that. So it's less complicated, but a lot of times it's going to end up in the same final spot, if that makes sense.
Yes, a lot of the same looking shots. Just going to get there a different way.
Running ball screens, pin downs, dribble handoffs. It's just going to be a little more direct, maybe. If that's the right word.
I do kind of feel like watching them the other night that Xavier Simpson's certainly still feeling his way out in this whole thing, but I do kind of think that while he was obviously able to thrive in the previous system, that this does kind of fit how he's comfortable playing. I think because he can get the ball to any spot on the floor basically, and make really tough passes, cross court passes through traffic. He's got great vision, and it's going to be really interesting to kind of see how he navigates this whole thing, because he's also balancing the fact that someone needs to score the ball, and his fine line of doing too much when it comes to shooting is razor thin, and how he kind of walks that thing. It very well could end up being probably one of the top 3 things that dictates how this season goes.
Yeah, and also he needs people to make shots when he finds them, right? Because he's going to find guys. He's an elite half-court passer, one of the best in basketball. I don't care what system you put him in. He's going to find guys, and he's going to, like, Isaiah Livers got 5 wide-open shots in that open scrimmage, and they were probably all from Simpson. So I think he'll be fine in any system. I'm more curious how he does in kind of the up-tempo stuff. He was better as a sophomore in transition, but struggled a bit last year, both like finishing and with turnovers. And that was without really a heavy emphasis on running.
Yep.
So he'll need to get better in that regard, I think. I think that's one of the underrated areas to watch from him.
Yeah. And a part of it's because of his height, but sometimes I do think that he can just get a little too cute with how he tries to put the ball in the basket. There does need to be a certain level of, like, just go lay the ball up. Like, just lay the ball. Everything doesn't have to be with the English and, going to the opposite side of the rim and da-da-da-da. Like, I think sometimes he makes things just a little bit more difficult than they need to be. And, if he's going to be someone who's counted on to score on the break, just go grade school style, man. Just put it off the box.
Yeah, a lot of times, though, the more creative you are around the basket, the more that you've learned that the traditional route doesn't really work for you, right?
True.
So that's a hard line to kind of go against, right? Like, the hook shot was implemented because the layup was blocked. So that is where I'm at with that. I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer.
Did you catch the Q&A before the scrimmage?
I did not.
When one fan who, mad respect to whoever it was, because this person's got some balls, got the microphone and said something to the extent of, Xavier, we know that you can make those running right-hand hooks, but I wonder, can you make it left-handed? And there was definitely like, in the gym, and Xavier just got the mic and just a very, very quick and direct yes. And handed the, and I thought for sure his first shot of the scrimmage was going to be a left-handed hook, but he didn't come through on that one. But
disappointing. Last thing I wanted to hit on with Michigan, they played a little zone.
Oh boy!
Do you think that it makes sense to play a 2-3 zone with 2 6-foot point guards?
No. First of all, I hate zone defense. So you're asking the wrong person. But
I was told they also played zone in the scrimmage.
They did. It would be... I need to see this team play man-to-man against a couple regular teams before saying that they should look at zone. And a lot of it goes back to so many years covering Beeline and him kind of always making that point of, unless you can spend the time in practice doing it and doing it right, then you shouldn't bother trying to do it in games because it's going to be half-assed and you're going to get exposed. So, how much time are they giving to it in practice would be my first question when it comes to zone defense. And personnel-wise, nothing screams at me that that's the best look for this team.
I can see it if you're talking about a Franz lineup
Right.
or maybe like a 2-big lineup,
Right.
like if you're going to go something like that. I think with Michigan's base lineup right now, it takes away from what Simpson and Teskey do best defensively. I just don't really see it as something that makes a lot of sense, but I can also see like it's preseason. We're going to work on it because we're going to implement our basic zone concepts now, even if it's not something that we're going to emphasize. But
right, because
anyone
who knows that there's always that game or two in a season where everything goes wrong, or the other team is just making every freaking shot they put up, and you just need to do something. Like all right, well, nothing is working, so we got to throw it out and do something completely different. And screw it, let's just show 2-3 zone. You need to have at some point actually done it though in a real game. So I agree with you. I think that there's a good chance that maybe that's it. But if they come out, next Tuesday and shows a 2-3 zone in the first half, then it's a thing.
That's a thing. Yeah,
Right.
I agree with that. If there's double-digit zone possessions in an exhibition, that's something you're going to actually do.
Right. I wouldn't say as much on Friday, because on Friday I think it could still fall under the umbrella of what you're talking about. I'm talking next Tuesday. If a game that counts, so.
Anything else you wanted to wrap up with?
I got
know
nothing,
you have to
man.
keep it.
Yeah, I got a little
keep it
staff
tight
meeting
today.
action, the athletic meeting in person.
Bust down car. Rough morning for you.
My car's busted. I got a meeting. I got a story that still isn't finished. It's supposed to run tomorrow, man. Speaking of, check out the athletic tomorrow, because barring something bad happening, I hope to have a rather large piece that I think people would be pretty interested in checking out. So, knock on wood, everyone say your prayers on that one. So, all right, that's going to do it for this week. You good, Dylan? You got anything else?
No, let's wrap it up there.
My man. All right, subscribe to UM Hoops for all your preseason content, and you have a lot of video there, right, Dylan?
Yeah, we have video of the whole open practice if you want to watch.
I don't know if you're finding that anywhere else. I don't think.
I don't know.
All right. So check that out. Check out The Athletic. Subscribe to The Athletic. Rate this podcast if you would be so kind. That helps us find new listeners. And then after that, be sure to tip your bartenders and your servers.